Witness the colossal boxing showdown nobody expected, live on Netflix. International superstar Jake Paul, the sport's most watched fighter, takes on Britain's two-time unified heavyweight world champion and Olympic gold medalist, Anthony A.J. Joshua, in the most dangerous and defining matchup of their careers. This is Judgment Day. Watch Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua, Friday, December 19th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, live on Netflix.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
Every Who down in Who Newville liked the holidays a ton. But where to get great prices on gifts, they had no idea. None. They searched and they searched for great gifts under $25. Gifts for spouses and friends and even their toddlers. When suddenly one Who shouted, Walmart has what you want, knowing they have Lego, Tree Hut, and low prices to flaunt. So they enjoy the holiday season as Who's often do. Cheering and shouting, Walmart has incredible gifts. Who knew? Find gifts they'll love under $25 at Walmart.
Hello and welcome back to the Humans of Speedway podcast. I'm Ian Brannan and it's a great pleasure to bring this conversation with one of British Speedway's stars of the last, couple of decades, in fact, in British Speedway, Rory Schlein, who started his career as a teenager, making the move over in the early 2000s. Went on eventually to become British champion, of course, which is a story in itself. Him being an Australian, having represented his country at the very highest level in Speedway World Cup performances, where, of course, he helped his side get on the podium. There's many stories to be had, many teams to talk about as well. I'm just looking at the list of teams he's raced for over the time. Started off with the Edinburgh Monarchs, Sheffield Tigers, Belle Vue Aces, the Coventry Bees, the Ipswich Witches, the Peterborough Panthers, the Lynn Stars, the Wolverhampton Wolves, Somerset Rebels, Poole Pirates, and of course winding up with the Berwick Bandits. And that's just in the UK. He also had quite a few, of course, abroad as well, riding in Poland and in Sweden as well. And we'll talk about some of those clubs through the course of this. His career also blighted by injury, one in particular in 2015, which we'll talk about, which could have been a career-ending injury, but he came back the very next season. It's a fantastic story, and we'll hear from Rory Schlein in just a moment. First of all, though, let's talk about the Australian Championships, something that Rory Schlein knows a bit about, in fact, and it's going to be live on BSN. You can watch on British Speedway Network in January. All 4 rounds of the Australian Championships will be broadcast live, including interviews in the pits, the full show, really. BSN heading down under to bring you that coverage, and it all gets underway at the start of January. The first 2 rounds are going to be at Albury Wodonga, to give it its full name. Then round 3 will be at Mildura, and round 4 very much in the Rory Schlein stomping ground of Adelaide at Gilman. Plus, there's another couple of meetings to bring you as well, including the Phil Crump Classic, which takes place on the 27th of December, and the FIM Oceania Championship, which will, both of those fixtures, in fact, feature some British names, not least Rory's former teammate, Scott Nicholls. Also, Luke Becker will be riding in that, Leon Flint, Luke Harrison, maybe 1 or 2 more as well at the both the Phil Crump meeting and also at Gilman for the Oceania Championships. Now you can get all 6 of these meetings on BSN at a special price of £44.99. If you're looking for a late Christmas present, then certainly one for you. Check that out. If you're an Australian viewer, there is a slightly different pricing structure. If you're in Australia, the Gilman meetings will be available via a separate manner, but for everybody else, £44.99 will be your price for 6 meetings of top-class winter speedway. On BSN, the British Speedway Network, watch.britishspeedway.co.uk, the place to head. Right then, on to business and our conversation with Rory Schlein. Sit back, relax and enjoy some great stories. I've been lucky enough to work with Rory on BSN over the past year or two, and always a privilege, always an eye-opener. And, I start off, as we start every episode of Humans of Speedway, by finding out, how did he get involved in Speedway? And really, for Rory, was he ever going to escape Speedway? Deep-rooted in his family, here he is, Rory Schlein.
Yeah, obviously my dad being a sidecar rider, But it wasn't just all bikes. It was like both my uncles raced sprint cars and midgets back in Australia. My granddad's raced scrambles and just motorsport in general. Wherever I was going to go, it was definitely going to be going around in a circle. But yeah, my dad always loved speedway, what we call solos, in Australia, and I sort of just hooked to it from day one. From a very, very early age, I used to get Dad to order me rerun videos from the UK, and I'd watch all the history videos and stuff like that on British Speedway, and obviously all the European stuff. And it was just in the blood, and nothing was going to change that.
And you were sort of born, and your family, your dad, and that, from the northern end of Australia as well, because I think traditionally a lot of the speedway happens quite a distance away from there. It's not necessarily a speedway heartland, as a traditional speedway heartland, perhaps, as such. So you probably had to travel quite a long way to get to a lot of these tournaments in Australia as well.
Yeah, if you go back in history, though, the Northern Territory was at one stage, I think it was like the late 80s and the early 90s, there was a few guys coming through from the territory. And, some people might remember the name like David Jackson, the Baxters, Wayne Bridgeford. These guys actually came to England and raced in the British League. I'd sort of, when I was coming through, I knew of these guys and watched them race. And, but yeah, bikes weren't the biggest thing up north. It was mainly sprint cars, speed cars. The sidecar scene was still pretty big. But yeah, the junior scene, the junior solo scene was always quite strong, and sort of took to it. And the numbers would be full fields each week. We'd race, and but yeah, early on we had to. I would never race out of Darwin. We would do maybe one meeting in Tennant Creek when the Ivan Major tour came over. We'd probably do one in Tennant Creek or Alice Springs. But the only time I ever raced outside Darwin was if it was for a national title, which was either down in Sidewinders. I think we did one down in Tamworth in New South Wales. So yeah, it was a long way, to obviously get a good competition.
Yeah, it is a big old place, Australia, that's for sure. And obviously you had quite a bit of success, though, as a youngster. So it wasn't just really for you something that you did as a hobby so much. You must have then obviously thought, well, I can make something of this as you're going through the ranks. And who were the sort of peers that you were coming through with at the same time? Who were the names that, because all these lads, wherever you're coming through, whether it's Poland, Britain, Australia, these riders that people see when they go to these meetings, obviously they don't realise that that's tip of the iceberg, really, that you've been knocking around together with these names most of your lives. Yeah,
well, when we moved from Darwin to Adelaide, and I can't remember what year, I think it was 95, I think. we made the move down from Darwin to Adelaide. And then obviously that racing was a lot more prominent, and we saw a lot more of the internationals who would come home, obviously, for the summer. So, like, the guys I always looked up to, were the normal guys, Crumpy, Adamsy. But there was one guy that I just took to, and it was just down to how bright his leathers were. And some people will probably remember me. He rode for Peterborough for quite a few years, was Mick Poole. And he'd always be on the Nines Wide World of Sports, and I think it was a Sunday Arvo. And they would have a couple of races from Gosford or Newcastle, and Mick Poole would be the gun, and like there'd be guys like Stephen Davies and all that sort of racing, in their local tracks and stuff like that. But yeah, where I got my colours from, like, about being bright, yeah, you can thank Mick Poole for that. But the normal guys, just grew up watching Crumpy and Adamsy and Sully as well, and really admired people like Todd Wilshire, Craig Boyce. And I think it was because I'm not saying they hung out with the lads or the kid, juniors, but they made themselves really accessible, through training days, and majority of them were always cool to talk to. They'd actually talk to all the kids and all the juniors whenever they come home. They weren't snobby or anything like that. They always had time for all the young lads, when every year they came home.
And obviously, for example, Crumpy around that time, he was obviously firmly heading for the Grand Prix kind of scene as well, wasn't he? But who were the other lads coming through with you at the time? Because you have your state championships in Australia, don't you? But then obviously you race nationally as well. So it's all a bit of a mishmash in some respects in terms of the amount of meetings you do. But there would be other sort of regular talents coming through at the same time.
At the time, probably when I just stepped out of juniors, obviously jumped onto the 500. It was at that time when Travis McGowan was stepping out of the under-21 scene. Rusty Harrison, there was a lad by the name Ben Shields was going really good then as well. Adam Shields, all these guys. And then when them guys moved on, it was the next, clot of young lads. And I think at that time, it was myself, Cam Woodward. There was a guy, Scotty James. There was Dane and Jay Stevens had stepped up out of the juniors as well. And then obviously just behind that, literally just behind that crop, that's when Chris Holder was coming on. And that was just as I was stepping out of the under-21 scene as well. So that's the best thing about the Australian scene. It was just constant flow of youth being always filtered through. There's always, like right now, there's a good crop of young lads coming through now. And I think my main guys back then, I think it was Cam Woody and Chris, especially in the under-21s, they were good battles.
Cameron Woodward, is he now referee? Am I right
he
there?
He is now a ref. I actually rode in a meeting he refed. So I did one meeting back in Mildura before I came back. Woody was on the buttons. Funnily enough, he was the first. When I decided I'm gonna do, I did a practice at Mildura, and I didn't have anyone to push me, and I seen Woody in the corner of my eye, and I said, "Oh, camshaft, come give me a push," and he came and gave me a push. So he's still active in the sport and that. So he's still about.
Yeah, it's good. I thought I'd seen that. I think he refereed the Aussie champs, or quite a few of them last year. I don't think he's not doing it this year, but I know he was on the buttons last year. I think for a few.
Yeah, I like it. I like that. That Mildura's a very. Even when you hang your boots up there at Mildura, they always try and keep, former riders and that. They encourage them to be involved, whether it's preparing track. Like you got Ryan Sedgman there. Now he's all part of the promotion and obviously preparing the track and stuff like that. Geordie Smith, I believe, still there with his dad, Stewie. So lots of guys, Lee Adams is still involved with training days down there as well. So Mildura's always been that kind of club as well. So, they always encourage guys to keep being involved. Lionsy still pops up every now and again for training schools, and they have a meeting for Lionsy as well. And even Big Phil Crump, he comes back for a meeting every year as well.
Yes, and that Phil Crump meeting's coming up actually. It's 27th of December this year, and that's going to be a big one. And you'll be able to watch it live on BSN as well. So there's a little plug. Drop that, clang that one in there. So yeah, and so you did all right. It was the Australian Under-16 Championship. You're bagging things like this, and then obviously promoters are always looking around. Was it you approaching them? Did they approach you when it came to that big move across the world? I mean, because that is a big step. It's a long way to come, but obviously you felt that was the next step.
Well, there was a guy and a lady who was from Scotland. Their name was Helen and George Taylor. Massive Edinburgh fans. And they were coming out to Australia every year and getting ready to do the big jump and immigrate, to Australia full time. And we got to know them. They obviously, that the place they were looking to move was Adelaide, and that's where we were based. And them being Speedway fans, we just met them at Sidewinders. And actually the Edinburgh Monarchs had already scouted me, and I had already signed the contract before I'd even ridden a 500. So they were fully committed and obviously saw something in me in a sense that, this lad's going to go really well. I'd signed a professional contract with Edinburgh Monarchs before I'd even, ridden a 500. So.
Wow. That's, Edinburgh have got a bit of a track record of unearthing a few gems, haven't they? I mean, Max Frick, probably another one that sort of leaps to mind, and many others, Justin Sedgman and obviously yourself there.
A lot of the Aussies that do end up at Edinburgh were due to Helen and George, the connections, seeing them in Australia and stuff like that. Like, so Sedgman, Sam Masters, Max Freak, myself. Good, strong connection, with the Aussies, with the Monarchs.
And then in that first year, you got a bit of silverware, but that was sort of on loan, wasn't it, at Sheffield? So you sort of went off there and got some action and first taste of success. Yeah,
well, when we flew over, we were supposed to ride in the back then, which I think was the Conference League, and it was supposed to be the Armadale, the Lithgow team, I believe it was, and. It didn't, and it folded before we even raced. So we were sort of, how are we going to get meetings? And we were just doing second halves at the time, and bumped into a guy by the name of Neil Machin, the promoter of Sheffield, who has big Australian connections. He signed me for the Prowlers to start with, and they were going through some injuries at the time, and drafted me in to win. I think we won the Premier Trophy, which was my first one, riding alongside the likes of Sean Wilson, Robbie Kessler, Simon Stead, Adam Allett. So some big names there, and obviously, it was a bit of a wild ride, really, because I wasn't being expected to be thrown into that sort of competition so early.
And Sheffield's a bit of a wild track at the best of times as well, especially when you're dealing with riders who have got a bit of experience and so on. It's quite a fast one. I'm not saying you haven't got anything like that in Aussie, because I think that's probably not true, because I think you do have some fairly big tracks, don't you? But I certainly in British Speedway, it is a fast track, isn't it, Sheffield?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with the Aussies. We don't seem to, there was a racetrack, you might have seen Exeter, they went on about a steel fence, they said, it's scary, but we grew up in Australia and then raced on the car tracks there with concrete walls. It didn't really faze us at all. And I remember going to Sheffield for my first time. I looked at it and went, that's a nice shaped track, no worries. And then I watched them starting to prepare it, and I then did get a little bit worried, because this was back in the day when they used to have it nearly a foot deep. And I said to Dad, they don't leave it like that, do they? But obviously, they worked it in, back then it was a very, very fast racetrack, and watching people the likes of Sean Wilson and Steady, flying around there, I learnt a lot in the sense of riding big European tracks, because Sheffield is a massive track. So you'd think like a lot of riders, like Polish riders and Eastern European riders, would take to it, and but it's changed over the years, like with the surface and stuff. Now they run it a lot slicker, and it berms up a little bit now, so it becomes a little bit more technical now, the Sheffield track. You still got to be brave, but it almost is like you have to read when to go into the dirt and how to hit it, and we see that week in, week out on the BSN.
Yeah, and certainly is that sort of outside line around Sheffield sort of latterly has been a thing, hasn't it, where they're really going close up to the fence, and as we saw, it can go wrong. That time with Emil, where he got sucked into that one. Everybody remembers that. Including the Shepmates guys from Aussie who picked up the commentary on that. That was pretty.
That was brilliant, yeah. Oh, everyone gives me stick for it now.
Yeah, I'm not sure it went down well with Emil, but hey, that's showbiz.
No. Wait, look, there's no such thing as bad press, but no. We're just grateful that both got up and we're okay.
Yeah, all's well that ends well. Belle Vue came along, obviously Edinburgh. Well, Edinburgh, were you doubling up with Edinburgh and Belle Vue at the time?
Yeah. It was 2003 when I got the phone call from John Perrin. I was riding for Edinburgh, and I think Crumpy had sort of, he was sniffing it out, seeing me like riding in the under-21s back in Australia, doing quite well. At the time, there was quite a few Aussies in there. There was Crumpy, Lyonsy, Jono, and then the likes of Screeny there as well. So it was a good side, but they obviously got in touch and got me riding, and started off really well there. Started off at reserve and then moved my way into the main body, and I think it was at the end of that season was at the end of that season or the year after. I think there was 2004. I raced for Edinburgh again and Belle Vue. We did a full season with Belle Vue. It was at the end of that season. Crumpy pulled out of the ELRC that year. I think it was like 24 hours before. And I think it was Jim Lynch rang me up and says, "You want to ride in the ELRC?" And I said, "Oh, that's full of Grand Prix riders." And they said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Oh, yeah, go on then." And, there was the likes of Lee Adams, Michael Max. I think Nicky was there, and Bjarne Pedersen, Ryan Sullivan. It was a mega field. And we went there and I don't know, it was very, very blurrish, by the end of the night, but I had top points scored and got into the final. And I was away with the Fairies in the final with Lee Adams, Ryan Sullivan and Bjarne Pedersen, all these guys who were in the Grand Prix. It was probably a bit too much and probably too soon because I just wasn't prepared. And the bubble burst and the lads got away from me. And I didn't care. I was still doing wheelies after the race. I was just absolutely buzzing and we blew up after that. And the phone was as hot as, a loaf of bread coming out the oven. Every promoter was offering me the world. And it was at that stage I had to make a big decision. There was a lot of, at that time, that under 21 level, there was Zagar, Freddie Lindgren, and there was Davidson, Majinski, and all these guys. They were racing in Poland and Sweden. And so it was at that time I had to make the decision to sort of drop the championship and sort of commit to ride in top flight England all the time, Sweden and Poland. So it was at the end of that year we sort of made that switch.
Before you dropped the championship, though, you had your name sort of. I know this was the sort of season prior to that, but 2003. Edinburgh. People who haven't been to Armadale, they have got like a little board up in the stadium of the legends who have won some silverware, and your name is there for posterity for that 2003 year. Yeah,
we finally got the camel off the back and won the league in 2003 and. Probably one of my most enjoyable years that year because of the characters in that team with the likes of Freddie Schott, Peter Carr, who to this day I'd still say I probably learnt the most off. And then, we had another young Swedish lad he was another guy who was up and coming, who Wolverhampton was, had sort of signed and loaned to Edinburgh. Magnus Carlsen, who was Michael and Peter's brother. And we had the seasoned veteran like Wayne Carter, and it was just a really extraordinary team and really, really enjoyable year. To this day, some of the stories and the memories are always there. I can still picture them now, and I'm always grateful for that year, because that was my sort of first. I know I won the Premier Trophy with Sheffield, but I wasn't a Sheffield rider in that sense. With Edinburgh being their first one, and in the manner we did it was not only that we won the league the night before, but the next meeting we had to go to was Glasgow. So that made it a little bit sweeter.
I think it's all very well having good riders in a team. Obviously, you need that, but you need that the right sort of riders as well, don't you? You know, the chemistry needs to be right, the banter among the team or whatever. That has all got to click as well. Yeah,
being part of many teams and team building, over the years, being part of obviously the Edinburgh deal, and then a few years into my top flight, we did it with Coventry, and there's no secret formula or anything how you want to, you look at it how when the promoters build their teams, there is a pattern in a sense. We'll have to look at how successful Poole are, and when Coventry were at the hilt, at that time when I was there, and there was a pattern, but it was so hard to try and gel a team. You think, on paper, this team's unbelievable. I've seen so many, not accomplish anything. But then there are teams I think when Birmingham reached the playoff final, when they were more or less tipped to finish bottom. Martin Slaminski started the year at 7 and finished at number 1. That was sort of the year Doyley broke through as well. So it's a hard one, but that's why I think when you do win the league in certain teams, it's always special.
Yeah, so you were there with Belle Vue. You had a few spells with Belle Vue as well, hadn't you? Sort of, you obviously went off to Coventry, but then came back again for another couple of years, 2011, 2012 sort of time as well. And that was obviously a different era again then.
Yeah, I just was coming out of we had a really good run with Coventry, 2 league titles, 2 knockout cups. So I was, always grateful to Coventry, but it was, and I wasn't the only one at that time. Like Bomber made the move that year as well. Coventry were going through some changes, and I got on really well with Jim Lynch, and Jim Lynch was the team manager at the time. We drove up there, and I just thought this is maybe going back to where, we started the Elite League would be good, and always rode Kirky Lane really well. Got wind of Bomber. Bomber was going as well. I just thought, this had a bit of a feel-good factor to it, and, to spare the Belle Vue team with Bomber was sort of like, just ticked all the boxes. And, I don't know, that year just seemed to really, really click. There was a year when they introduced the new silencers as well. But we were very, very clever that year. I had started doing testing with Johnsy the year before, with stuff where a lot of people were saying it's not going to happen, and a lot of people were on the back foot when we got there. But we were so far ahead. But it was really, really strange. We found stuff that I had old stuff that worked with these new silencers, and like compared to what a lot of guys are buying new engines trying to get these things to work, and I was working off old engines that we had just changed a few things, cams, went with some really old cams at one stage on some engines, and that worked. And we had a really, really good year, not just in England, in Sweden as well, and Poland. So it was one of my better years for sure.
We need to spend some time to talk about Coventry, because that was quite an era for you. Obviously, the whole thing with Coventry, people know. Obviously, sadly, Coventry is no longer here. But at the time, they were. Coventry as a whole, the stadium was one of the focal points of British Speedway, and had been for years and years, following on, I guess, from when Wembley packed it in and Coventry kind of came in and took over as that focal venue. Until Cardiff and all that. But Coventry as a team really got this head of steam up, and in that time in the mid-2000s, and you were there right in the thick of that. And talking about, successful teams, that is one of the teams of this, millennium, I suppose, from post-2000. Coventry, one of the most successful through that period until probably, say, Poole or Belle Vue, whoever sort of come on to take over now.
Yeah, like we did the treble won the Knockout Cup in 2006, and you could just see the team that Oaksey, Mr. Sandu, Colin Pratt, what you got to, I don't know if a lot of people know, but that era, it just wasn't the riders. There was so many people amongst that club. Like I just mentioned, you had Colin Pratt, Peter Oakes, Big John from Billbase, who was was the team sponsor, who was heavily involved in the club. It was, and then we had, like you would have heard, the Nuneaton supporters group, massive supporters group, and they Sandu and that they build this team. When you say, like, the first year I went there was myself, Bomber, Andreas Jonsson, I think it was Daniel Davison, Martin Smolinski came in as well. So that was sort of like, I think they started the year before this rebuild they were doing, and they got me, like, I think when I was riding there for Belle Vue, double figures every time I went there. And Oaksy got me in if you remember the little hut underneath the grandstand, he tugged me race jacket and says, "Can I have a word?" And he got me in there and shut the door, and I thought, oh, we're on here. I think we're going to go and start talking contracts. So, but yeah, they started that build, and 06, we had they were constantly trying to bring youth in. We brought in obviously Scott Nichols as well, and we built that basis. The core team was Scotty, Bomber, myself, and then we brought in Ollie Allen, Martin Slaminski, and then that year in 2007 we made a change with Morten Resinger, who was just struggling at the time, and it was a key point because Swindon were the team. They were tipped to win that year, and it was a really, really strong year. And they made changes as well, and they even got harder. So we made a change, but Colin and Praddy and Oaksy were very clever. They thought, where can we be stronger down in the bottom? And we went and got a guy who had just lost his job at Oxford by the name of Steve Johnson, and it was at a really fickle time, and it's not, people probably forgot about it. And there was that bit of rivalry between Bomber and Scott at the time, and it was getting a bit tasty, if I'm brutally honest. But, they're always professional, and they're always putting Coventry first. But I think we got to a stage at the end of the year, and I believe it was after the runoff they had for the last qualifying spot, where Scott sort of, I think Scott gave Bomber a bit of a tip or give him a nudge, I think, in the runoff, and Scott got the final bit. The first thing we said, well, not we, the first thing Jono said on track walk, said, "Hey lads, what'd you get up to on the weekend?" Just to break the ice. But that was the best thing about Jono. Like, he was able to take something that could have been a little bit, bit tasty, bit rough around the edges, and he was able to make light of it and get the lads laughing. And when he came in like halfway through the year, he was like that the whole year. And him and Gennaro were bouncing between second string and reserve, so we always had a great reserve rider. And but yeah, it was an absolute mega team. Going away and we'll win at Reading, and that was when Reading were had the likes. I think it was Greg Hancock in that at the time, and I'd say it was a tough year that year, but it was just so pleasurable to be a part of that side, because a lot of the people in that side they were progressing. They were pushing. Everyone was pushing themselves to be better at that year. Scott in the Grand Prix, Bomber in the Grand Prix. I was trying to qualify for the Grand Prix. And we were always pushing each other, who's going to top point score. And I got to be honest, Oaksy had a hard time who was going to go in Heat 15 a lot of the times that year, because we were all, there'd be some nights we were all on 13 points and Oaksy had to make the hard call on who was going to get Heat 15.
It's a nice problem to have, I guess, though, for a team manager, isn't it? That if you're spoiled for choice of numerous people in double figures, who's going to go?
Yeah. I think he had a few of them, but I think he had more headache the year after when he had to make a decision on how many guys he had to get rid of, because he couldn't fit us all in.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you're talking there, I mean, I think, again, a team of really good riders, but as you sort of touched on there, quite a team of different mentalities as well, I suppose. We know like Jono, who's quite known for his banters, practical joke, winding people up maybe a little bit more. Maybe Bomber, very much, more head down, get on with the job, great racer. But, I don't know, different sort of personalities, perhaps just an example there.
Just, yeah, and that's why I said, like, there's just no script to how to build a team. You would have looked at that Coventry team. It didn't. I'm not going to say it would have been jumping off the paper. Obviously, because Morten Risinger was a big part of that build at the time. Like, he was bought the year before I came in. He was a huge part of that transformation of building that squad. Even though I think we were running second at the time behind Swindon, and then just that one key signing with Jono, and we also obviously lost Ollie Allen, who was having a great season as well. We lost Ollie just before the playoffs. Who was a massive part, who, on his day, one of the best gators I've seen, in Speedway, because he was just so talented, like, gating wise. So again, it was a great year, but it was also in that period, that was when it was so business-like, especially for myself, so busy. Like, me and Bomber were, at that time, because we were racing together, not only just at Coventry, we were racing together at Rybnik. Also, we'd be flying together anyway into Sweden as well, because obviously we just more or less, I probably spent more time with Bomber that year than I did with my fiancée. So, that was sort of the year it all changed for me, in the sense of that it became a job that year because of like how busy we were, what I was doing, racing in 4 leagues, trying to qualify for the Grand Prix, World Team Cup. It was, it was just full on.
Did I hear a story or see a story about Scott Nicholls? Was it Scott Nicholls and yourself, or is it you with Scott Nicholls? I don't know. Your name was certainly mentioned. About, did they put you in the kit bag, or did someone get put in a kit bag? I heard about this somewhere.
Yeah, I got sponsored by Bell Helmets, and when you get sponsored by companies like that, they give you all these free goodies, and they gave me this kit bag, which can only be described as the Taj Mahal, and it was too big, but it was a free kit bag. I'm using it, so I brought it in the first. I think it was press and practice, and Janiro, and I think I remember I didn't sit in between Billy or Scott, but I sat next to him, and Billy and Scott says, "Don't bring that next week, or you'll be going in it." And I brought it back next week, and Janiro was a big boy, and he could man muscle anyone, and he stuffed me inside the kit bag, zipped me up, and put me in the showers. There's some of the stories that went on, in the Coventry change rooms.
Where's Rory? Haven't seen him for a week. But that time, I mean, what sort of 2007, 2008? Would that be your busiest time racing, as you say, in Poland, Sweden?
Yeah, but it all sort of started. That was when it just went mental. Racing all over Europe. 2008 was a bit up and down. I got let go by Coventry, went to Ipswich. We were racing I think we raced a little bit with Wrocław that year, and we were still with Eskilstuna that year as well. And at the same time, doing all the qualifiers, that they were different back then. There was more qualifiers back then than there was what there is now. It was an up and down 2008, but then 2009 it got busier again. We changed clubs in Poland, went to Grudgens. We signed for Dackarna in Sweden as well. I went back to Coventry for 2009, had a really good year. A bit injury prone, but I bounced straight back after a collarbone and knee injury that year. And 2009 again, and then in 2010, I'd say up until about around 2015, up until when I had my back injury, it was, 60, 70 meetings plus a year. Sometimes we were pushing even more than that. 2-3 flights a week. Just living out of a bag, really.
That is, obviously a side of Speedway that still happens today. That lifestyle of, you're in and out of each club. You come in a couple of hours before maybe and race your meeting, pack up, head straight to the airport. Maybe you're sleeping on a hotel, in a hotel at best, but in reality it could be the back of a van, could be the airport floor or anything like that.
Yeah, and like I remember it was in the 2007 year with me, Bomber, Scott, Ollie was riding abroad as well, Martin Slaminski, Jono was riding abroad. We'd all just jump in someone's van straight after me, especially on a Monday night. We would literally race Coventry, and someone said, "Oh, I'm going to Stansted tonight. All jump in with me." We all jumped in, and we'll all drive down and would stay in the hotel, get maybe 2-3 hours sleep on the red eye, straight out to Sweden, flying to Skavsta, and then we'd all sort of do that when we got to Skavsta, because we all rode for different clubs. We might be racing against each other, racing with each other on a Monday night, and then Tuesday we're racing against each other. And then literally you'd have to, you'd all meet back up at the same hotel in Sweden. Same again, 2-3 hours sleep, jump on the red eye again, back into England. We may race at Poole, or it was at Oxford, or wherever we were on the Wednesday night. Yeah, and then we'd be racing with each other again that night. So it was a bit of a code between riders, and sometimes Darcy Ward would give me a lift down to Poole, I'd be racing against him, but he'd give me a lift, and then there'd be sometimes Darcy would come here and have a sleep here before he was going up to Manchester to race when we were in Sweden. Yeah, so it was, that was sort of an unwritten sort of code, amongst the riders, and share taxis and not just, even share rooms sometimes, because sometimes you'd only be in it for 2 hours and you think, I'm not going to pay €80 for 2 hours sleep. So you just share a room with another rider and just split the bill.
And this is why, obviously, people like to see a bit of rivalry between riders, but there's not a massive amount, because it's such a small world, Speedway, that there's not a massive amount for too much fierce rivalry these days, because, as you say, someone who you're firmly on the opposite side of the fence of one night, the next night you're lining up in the same race as him.
It was always... whether you're racing against your teammate, like when we went out there, like myself and Bomber would throw lumps at each other when we raced against each other, but it was hard and fair. And then when we'd come back to race with each other in Coventry, our goals aligned. We were there to win for Coventry, and that was the same. And then I think that's where we generated a lot of respect within that core of riders, like especially with Scotty. And over the years, we've had some tremendous battles. I spent a lot of time with Simon Stead and Ollie Allen in my earlier years, because I met them for the first time in Australia when they'd come over on a live major trip. And, growing up with them and racing them, it was like you felt like you grew up with them, but you went to the start line and you guys were like, right, you leave that in the toolbox, you go out and battle each other. But you did it with respect and obviously, fairness. There definitely some riders have overstepped the line, and words would be crossed and stuff like that. But, the majority of the time it was left out on the track. So
let's talk about, you touched on your accident in 2015, because that was obviously a major part of a point in your career, an unfortunate one, but one that you came through, but I think the severity of this injury that you had, and you were racing in Poland, weren't you? You were racing for, was it Łódź at the time you were racing for in Poland? And you had this crash, one of these probably sort of crashes that, could have gone either way. It could have been one that you just picked yourself up and walked away from on another day, but this was the occasion that you went careering into the fence. And, well, pick up the story for us, really, because you were left with major injuries, and I mean, to put it finally, it could have, at the very least, been the end of your career, and you could have been left with some, potentially life-changing injuries in that same crash. Yeah.
We all, going through, obviously losing Lee Richardson, this is what I mean is building up, and you find yourself, you don't think of that. It can happen, but you just don't. When you get pushed off by your mechanic, it's just not in your mind. But we know that's part of it. And that day, everything felt good. We had a new engine tested. We felt really good that year. We had a really good start to the season, riding well pretty much everywhere. And I felt like I was on. Like, riders know when they know when they're on, and they know they're on for a good year. And I felt that year. I was I think I was on the money, I'd have had a really, really good year. And, just unfortunately, got tagged from behind going into turn 3, and naturally you jump off it, try and wash off the speed, but my bike hit the air fence and lifted the air fence up off the ground. And, and I hit it was an old track. It was the old Łódź track. So it was, the solid wooden fence that, I hit flush from my back, and felt everything. There, wasn't knocked unconscious, nothing. Felt the whole deal. And, unfortunately, I laid there, and, I still remember to this day, Mads Corneliusson was my teammate, and they knew it was bad. And I was curled up in a ball, and he was there leaning over me when they were trying to straighten me out onto the spinal board. And when they straightened me out, I lost all feeling in my legs, gone. And I still, to this day, I've never seen someone turn white. He was like green. And he just turned away and walked off. He couldn't be there. Because of that day, obviously, he thought, oh my God, he's paralysed. So, yeah, that's vivid in my mind. I can still remember. They put me on the spinal board, and it was pretty bad. So I went in for emergency surgery later that night, and I think I was on the table for just under 7 hours. Yeah, two large rods and 8 screws. And I think the worst part was having to call my missus and tell them, and I'll say, look, I'm going to go under. They've given me a 50-50 chance. And that was what the surgeon said. I'd damaged the spinal cord as well. I'd compressed it. I'd actually cut the right side of the spinal cord. And they just said, look, you've got a 50-50 chance. So it was a hard one. It was a hard one to try and, they said, oh, you're going down now. So I didn't really have time. They literally threw a disclaimer in front of me to sign that I understood that I might not walk again. I had to sign that before I went down to surgery. And so when I woke up, obviously all a bit dazed and whatnot, and because I'd been heavily on the morphine, you get itchy and pinned, like you get itchiness throughout your body. And I come to and I lifted my leg up as you do. You think, I'm going to scratch the bottom of my heel. And I've lifted my leg up and I'm just scratching it, not knowing that, I've just woken up from surgery, not knowing. And that's sort of when I got me bearings. I went, oh my God, I can feel I can move my legs, I can feel them. And dark times, but we got through it.
Yeah, no, I remember obviously the accident, and it was obviously a serious one because there was, a lot of concern, everywhere about it. And I think you got airlifted back, didn't you, as well? Is that right?
Yeah, we were there for just under, I think it was under 3 weeks. We were in Łódź, in the Łódź hospital, and we're having trouble getting me back. I won't go into it too much. It was just couldn't get me into. I wanted to go to the Coventry hospital because they wanted me to send me to a special spinal unit in Oxford. I didn't want to go there because it wasn't close enough to my it was my fiance then, but my wife now, and my kids. I wanted to go to the Coventry one, which was only around the corner from my house. So we were trying everything to get there, but for some reason they wouldn't admit me. So my insurance company had to sort of twist their arms and find a way into the hospital. So it got delayed for a week, and finally got the all clear, and they flew me back in a private jet back to. I flew into Oxford, the army base there, and then got transported to Coventry Walsgrave, where I spent another 2.5 weeks there, and just doing rehab stuff and getting back up and walking, and then I was finally home.
Yeah, and obviously it was a long road to recovery, but not too long because you were back in action the sort of the following season. But I think it came at a similar time though that obviously Darcy had his accident as well, didn't he? Sort of subsequent to that, but that sort of shows you how it can end up if it doesn't go well. Something as simple as that, almost a similar crash, and we know what happened to Darcy, unfortunately.
It was very a strange time, really, because I started filming my documentary the morning after Darcy's crash. I'd got a phone call late at night to tell me it wasn't good. And I was just at that point, because that week I'm going to race again. That was sort of like, I've decided I'm going to race again. And I knew, I rang the producer, the guy who was doing the documentary, and I said, I was trying to ring him to cancel it because I just was a wreck. I was an absolute mess. And they'd fallen asleep. And I was like, I can't not turn up. So I got up early in the morning, drove, like I hadn't had any sleep, and, knowing Darcy and what he was going through, and in a similar way that I sort of could sympathise, and that's how my brain was operating. And I just, it weren't a good time. And I remember when I was first able to go and see Darcy, I got in touch with him, and I think he went to the Oxford plate, similar where they wanted to send me. I think it was Oxford, and I went to see him, and it was surreal, weird time. A guy who I admired. I know he was younger than me, but I admired his talent, admired his the way he carried himself with sort of that relaxed kind of attitude, and just because I'd raced with him a bit as well in Sweden, and watched him come up. And when I first met Darcy, it was in the Australian Championship. I think he was 17, and he was on these bright red bikes. And when I seen him, it was in the Australian Championship, so it was over a course of rounds, and I thought, this lad's wild. I said, he ain't gonna see the series out. That was my first impression. And then there was a race. It was the B final, and we ended up racing for that last slot. And I ended up getting into a battle with him to the point where I lost my nut, and I got past. I think we both got past, but he was all over me, and I just thought, who's this lad? And that was the night when they say I got introduced to Darcy Ward. I just knew then the shapes he was. When I was looking back, and I thought, where is he? He's off the bike, but he was actually hanging under the handlebars. Next minute, I'm only a few feet off the fence, and he's trying to go around me. Thought, I was just, again, he was just that talented. And then I watched him progress when he come over, and I think first year was with Kings Lynn, and then moved to Poole, and it was just hard to see him, go through all that. And to this day, I know Smarslick, one of the best riders of all time. I still, to this day, I think Darcy would have matched him just because of how talented he was.
Yeah, you're not alone in that, and I know we were chatting with Midlow about this after a meeting a while ago, because obviously, Darcy used to live with him, and he's saying, undoubtedly that Schmarslick wouldn't have had as many world championships if Darcy was still around. That's for sure.
Yeah, you're not saying that he would have had more world titles than Smarslick, but I've got to be honest, it would have been an absolute battle. I think you could have probably put it down to the Crumpy and Rickartson maybe rivalry, even the Golub Rickartson rivalry to an extent. I just think that's how talented these guys were. They were two guys who just rode a speedway bike different to everyone else. I think the closest guy to that sort of style and talent was Chris Holder. He was another guy that injuries got the better of him. But yeah, these were two guys that you could just see them going at it for years and years and years. Yeah,
it's a shame, but at least it was good to see that Darcy's still involved in Speedway and putting some meetings on now in Australia, or at least trying to. I think they're doing a good job of shutting some of his tracks down that he's been involved in, aren't they? But he's hanging in there.
Yeah, I remember it was a while ago I spoke to him about the obstacles he's having to navigate with the new legislation and insurance issues they've got over there. It makes it quite difficult for motorsport over there at the minute, for sure.
So after that, you were riding for Kings Lynn at that time, I think, in the UK, weren't you? But you came back and rode there, and then there's this another interesting period, really, the Wolves period, because obviously you're into this sort of second half of your career, I suppose, there. But then, getting your teeth into Wolves, being a former Coventry rider, I don't know, maybe controversial in some eyes, potentially. But I think Coventry not being there, lining up with Pete Adams and, again, always a solid outfit there, wasn't it? And again, another team that's sadly no longer there. But yeah, great times.
One of probably the best team managers I ever rode under. Always admired Pete, even before, because I knew, being me, having watched all the videos and stuff from rerun videos from years and years ago, I sort of knew of Pete Adams, when he was helping Bruce Pennell and all these guys back in the day. and of his time at Cradley. It was that year, the following, because when I'd come back from me back, I'd actually I only just got into the season. That's when I did my shoulder injury. And I generally thought that was it. I thought that was it. And then again, I thought, no, I'll give it another crack. And it was at that time when I was sort of looking, right, I think you're maybe just over, you're on you peaked. How can you keep doing it? How can you keep doing what you're loving? So Chris Louis rang me and said, look, would you fancy dropping down to the championship? Getting more meetings and stuff like that. And because I hadn't had a lot them 2 years, I did me back and did me shoulder. Like my European racing sort of really, really dried up, and the offers weren't really coming in. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. And I was at the time I think I was talking to Belle Vue at the time to ride with Belle Vue, but that didn't come off, and I was actually without at the time, Elite League or Premiership club. And because Kings Lynn didn't want me, and I was like, wow. Started the season great with Ipswich, really enjoying it, like going back because I rode for Ipswich, I think it was in 2008. Always had a great relationship with Chris Louis and obviously Richie Hawkins. And one of these days, I just got this phone call, and it was good old Pete, and he says, "Would you be interested in coming to Wolves?" And I said, "Yeah, just send me a contract, but it didn't come to light till after the year I rode that year. Pete had been after me for quite a few years. He'd been trying to sign me for numerous years. I know the reason why that didn't happen, but that materialised, and it was funny because I had a bit of my relationship with CVS was a bit distant to start with, but probably worked out to be one of the easiest guys I dealt with when it come to doing deals, contracts, anything to do with it. It was so easy. And really enjoyed my working relationship with CVS and Pete. It was strange because, that you said the Coventry Wolverhampton thing, but because Coventry and Wolverhampton were run so similar, it felt like I was at Cov. Pete and CVS ran very similar club to what Pratty and Oaksy did at Coventry, and I think that's why I felt so at home there. Midlands-based club, and the fans took to me straight away, which was great. And I actually fell in love with the Wolves fans. And the track I really enjoyed. It was good because I really had to adapt my style as well. I really had to, change how I rode. I went a lot more upright, and it suited. The Wolves track really did suit me.
Yeah, it is. And obviously you started your career with Edinburgh, and maybe that sort of falls in a similar kind of bracket as well. A very much of a bit more of a tricky track. It's not a full wind it on and, hold on for 4 laps. You've got to, use your head a little bit there. Yeah,
obviously everyone knows about the Coruscant corridor, and it was one thing. There's so many riders struggled to get on it, and I still remember my first when I went there with Cov. And I got around there like it was a breeze, on the corridor, and that's probably why Pete thought, "Hang on, we're missing something here. Why haven't we seen this lad before?" And really took to it, and I always enjoyed riding at Wolves. I just thought the racing for such a small technical track, it was a fun track. Like the battles I had there with PK and Michael Max, and even riders like David Howe and even Wolfie there. I had some great battles with Wolfie there. Just always even if you went there and you didn't make a start all night, you always felt as a home rider, I can still win this race, and you could be sitting in third. And that happened loads of times where you just be sat there in third. Next minute, now you're in front, and now you're trying to slow the race to get your teammate, alongside you. And that was the wonder of Wolves, how that track really, really, developed its racing.
And it always seemed like a good turnout as well, didn't it? It was like well supported too. And I know that everybody was crammed in that sort of small area, but that kind of made the atmosphere too, didn't it?
Yeah, and you could always hear them. You could always hear the Wolves fans, And again, that was very simple. I know Coventry, you could stand right round, but it was the same at Cov with the main grandstand. Like you always knew when you rode past the, that main straight, it was, the crowd was there, and Wolves had that same feeling as well.
Because you had a spell with Somerset too,
Yep.
where you were racing there. Obviously, were they in the championship then?
That was in the championship. Yeah, that was in the championship. Yeah. And I've got to be honest, and another enjoyable year. We didn't win anything. And I remember a phone call from my dad, and he said, "Somerset, that's not a track you normally go well at." And I said, "Oh, cheers, Dad." But it was just, I thought, you know what, I want to do that. I want to get on a track, after my back injury, I want to get on a track, to get that flow, ride them tracks where it's wide open, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I broke the track record there that year. So, and I got a chance to race with Bomber again, which I really enjoyed. And it was a great sport. It was disappointing that the way, another British club and another British track that closed down. And but when one door closes, another one opens.
Yeah, and that was sort of in the form in the end with Poole, wasn't it? Because everybody stopped in 2020, apart from you, because you went and won the British Championship. Let's talk about that, because people say, hang on a minute, he's been wearing the green and gold. He's a fully fledged Australian national team rider, and then you took part in the British Championship from there. So how did that decision to maybe switch codes come about?
So yeah, at the time, I remember Brando wanting to stir the pot and stuff like that, and still remember to this day. I believe even Kelvin had a pop as well. I think on I think it was at Eurosport, was it? Yeah, it was on the telly.
Yeah.
But I'm admirer of history of Speedway, and you get a lot of these anoraks who think they know it all, but they seem to forget. They had a certain gentleman like Barry Briggs and Ivan Major win the British Championship, and then they seem to forget as well. The Australian Championship, we allowed Simon Stead to race in the Australian Championship, Scott Nichols, it was Kyle Newman, Joe Screen, Frederick Lindgren, and so it was a lot of. I couldn't understand it, you can see this is not something new. It's, and I'm not taking anyone's spot. But all it was, I'd completely retired from racing for Australia. I thought my days were done, riding the World Team Cup and that. And I'd been riding on a British license for 2 years. And then I had a sponsor come to me and said, if you rode in the British final, we'd back you. And I thought, well, I don't know if I'm allowed to. So I just went through the motion and did all the stuff I had to do. And I was then given an email back at the time, the chairman there, will remain nameless, but he sent me saying, if you can do one more year on a British license, we'll allow you to race in the British final. And then that's what I did. And they come around to the next year where you fill out your licenses. Do you want to compete in the British final, in the qualifying rounds? I said, yeah, no worries. Yeah, I'll do it. And I did it, and the first year we did it, we finished third at Belle Vue. And it was good. I really enjoyed it because I wasn't going home to race in the Australian Championship. It wasn't financially viable for me to do it. They, when you say funding or stuff like that, they didn't really back, help any of the Aussie lads to come home. The money was drying up. So the only incentive for the Aussies were to go there to get the qualifying spots for the GP or visas, which I didn't need neither. So, and that's why. That's purely basically why I stopped racing in Australia, because I just didn't need to go back there. But yeah, it was just coincidence, and I really enjoyed it, and honoured, was always honoured to race in a British final, and obviously to win it as well was even better.
Yeah, your name's on the trophy for full posterity now. And then Speedway returned, but without Somerset, and so you needed to find a new club, which ended up being Poole Pirates, which wasn't a sort of bad place to land up, because that was when they made that move then to Championship Speedway themselves, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think we know how well Matt Ford is at building teams. But I think that year he obviously got a basis of a side. But you know, I obviously with everything gone on with Somerset, and at that time I should have been an Australian because I was retiring at the end of the year before, like the COVID year. So I was sort of, what do I do? You know, I've now, you know, I'm riding for Wolves, but I've got no championship side. And while I was talking, I think it was Debbie, she said, look, expect a phone call from Matt Ford. And I went, nah, he's got a team. You know, I'm sure he's got a team. And I'm not joking. I think it was 5 minutes after I put the phone down, there's Matt. And I remember what he said. He said, it's taken me nearly 20 years for you to sign for Poole. Because he actually tried to sign me after that at ELRC in 2004.
Wow,
they came very, very close. It was between Poole and Coventry where I was going to go. And Matt Ford kicks himself to the side. he didn't get me, but and he joked about it. He said, it only took me 21 years to get you to come here, Schlein, but I finally got you. So yeah. But it seemed to tick all the boxes because it was like that side when it was. I looked at that side when they told me the squad racing with Danny again as well, and I just thought, you know what, if I'm going to enjoy a year, this is a year to enjoy it. I had a read with Stevie Worrell and Ben Cook, and it was just a really. It had that Coventry feel, like, you know, how we built the season up, and also I know what the culture was down there. It was good to be pushed as well by fans because they demand silverware, Paul. They don't, you know, one trophy is actually, we've got one trophy. You know, they expect to win trophies, you know, not just a trophy. They expect to win all the time. And I think that's a great way, a great outlook because, you know, you just demand success, and that obviously puts pressure not only on the riders, it puts pressure on the promotion to keep building successful teams. And I felt that just kept the fire strong till the end of the year, you know, to retire. And really, really enjoyed riding with Paul, and I know I was only there for 1 year, but really took to the crowd as well, to the fans.
As you say, there is that sort of sense of expectation with the Poole fans, and they've been rewarded quite handsomely in recent years. But it also comes right from the top, doesn't it? And it's sort of a mindset, I think, of we are going to win, and it's up to everybody else to stop us, rather than we've got to beat everybody else to win stuff. It seems to be the sort of a reverse kind of logic, really, that Poole are there to win. It's down to everybody else to stop that. Yeah.
But that's sort of, I think, probably why Matt. I don't know how it came about, how he could fit me in. But he probably looked at it and gone, I got Danny King and I got Stevie Worrell. I know I got two good spearheads. And I've always thought I'm always a team player. And there's with young Ben Cook, you know, young Aussie coming over for the first year, I believe it was that year. And I just think that was probably my key role, in the sense that, you know, you knew what Stevie was going to do, you knew what Danny was going to do. But us three, we just interchanged. We all had a spell at number 1, we all had a spell at number 3, we all had a spell at number 5. But, you know, I think, you know, Matt and Midlow wanted that old head in that sort of that team. But I felt like one of the kids anyway. Like that's what they made me feel like in my lap. At that time, I thought it was my last year. But yeah, they made me feel young again that year, being part of that team.
So you retired at the end of that season, and so the plan was you going back to Australia, and I don't know what your initial plan was for life beyond Speedway, but then this announcement comes in 2023, when they're building the teams at Wolves, that Chris Van Stratton's like, well, I had a phone call from Rory Schlein and we had a chat and, next thing you know, here he is, he's coming back. And everybody's like, what? He's retired. He's had his farewell due.
Yeah, I think it was Berwick that announced it first.
Was it Berwick that announced it?
I think it was Berwick. I'm pretty sure because CVS make sure Berwick don't release anything yet. I'm pretty sure Jamie went ahead and released it.
I remember doing an interview with CVS about it, and he was like, he was quite surprised. I think himself even then. But yeah, I think you might be right. It may have been leaked slightly.
Yeah, when it was just economics why it didn't work out, the Aussie move. Which we're all still suffering now. We're still being bitten in the backside from it now, and it just didn't work out. And we just thought, future wise, it was better to go back there. And the racing wasn't the first thing I was thinking of, but I was at the time where I didn't know I was going to get because just when I was racing for Poole, I was working, and at that time, I didn't know if I had my old job back. So it was a bit of unknown. So the reason why I thought I'd ride, I thought, well, for the first 12 months, it would be great just to earn a bit of money for the first 12 months. And that was the only reason, really. It wasn't anything else. And I just thought that'd just be great, just keep the pennies coming in. And I picked up the phone and I actually rang Matt first, because I thought, well, if I could go back to Poole, that'd be even better. And Matt wasn't able to squeeze me in. He had a different plan. And like he's got Team A, he's got Team B, he'll have about 5 teams. So that didn't work out. And I quickly rang CVS because obviously I think CVS was still part of the BSBA board at that time. And I just put it to him. I said, if you want me, I'm ready. And he said, I'll call you back. And I think it was a couple of days and we'd done a deal. And I thought, well, I need some more meetings really, because we need to make a bit more money. So I just started branching out to some teams, and I actually branched out to Gary Flint, I think it was, who then put me into touch with Jamie. And and that's how my relationship with Berwick started. And then signed with Berwick that year.
Yeah, and it was sort of going pretty well. And then obviously I think, you had that injury, which was covered live on BSN, unfortunately, in your break from commentating there at Scunthorpe, where you found out that, hit that fence there. And it was his shoulder, wasn't it? I think it's sort of...
it's a bit of a crazy crash, because it weren't really a big crash, like a lot bigger. But yeah, I broke my collarbone and my scapula. How I don't know, because I didn't think I've even watched it, and it's not that big of a crash. But yeah, broke me the collarbone and my scapula. I was getting pain in my neck, and that was the big, obviously everyone knows with my back injuries straight away. Paramedics they just put me on a spinal board and rushed me to Hull Hospital. So and it was a crazy 48 hours. I couldn't figure out what was going on. They said, look, we think you've broken your neck, you've broken your back. And I'm flipping out. I'm absolutely flipping out. There's no way I've broken my neck. I've got pain, but look, don't do that. They put me back in a collar, and another 24 hours later, I go back down for more scans, and they were trying to determine, he says, you've got a hairline fracture in your neck. You've got previous back fractures, but we can't. There's swelling in your back, and it was a crazy 48 hours. But what was determined, it was definitely broken collarbone, broken scapula. The hairline fracture in my neck was actually from my accident at Oxford from the year before, which wasn't picked up. And I'd actually fractured my neck in that crash at Oxford. So. Wow. And then that was that. Then I was like, yeah, I think that could have been the ninth. My 9 lives are up, I think. So yeah, I was sort of, I could have come back. I felt like if I could have come back at the end of that year, I could have, if I was fit enough. but that was it. I think the flame had gone. Yeah, the flame was out.
And I think you need to have that confidence if you're riding as well, don't you? You don't. I think it's probably sometimes more dangerous if you're riding and you think it's in the back. Once that seed's in the back of your mind, that you're conscious of something like that happening. That can actually make it worse, can't it?
The
rather
big thing for me, the meeting for me, that was a big, I had to step back a little bit. I actually guested for Sheffield against Leicester in the Premiership. And I rode that meeting, and I rode really well, probably the best I've ridden for a while. Racing against, Max and all that, and I know how well Sam goes around there, how well Dougie goes around there, and I rode really well. And at the end of the night, I actually was sat in the change rooms there. I was with Wolfie and stuff like that. I'm looking around, there's Wolfie and Chris Holder and stuff like that. And it was that night sort of I was thinking, I can't run with these lads anymore. I can't run with these lads anymore. I did 2 laps on the fence there that night, and I went, not for me anymore. not for me anymore. That, and with the setup I was having to run, I was talking to Chris about what because Jack was sonic around there, and trying to figure out how can I just stay on the pace with these lads. And the setup I was having to run, that even scared the hell out of me, but I had to run it, if I wanted to be on the pace. And and it was that night, and then obviously then the injury happened, and I just thought, no, it's time.
Yeah, quit while you're ahead is it's good. It's good that you can have the choice to quit yourself rather than it be fully forced on you, I suppose.
Yeah, but I watch the Speedway now, and I like that it reignites. It's like a cold start in the morning. it reignites. You go, hey, 4 starts, I'll be right. And then I start watching some moves, and then I watch a little bit of the Polish racing and Polish league, and I'm like, no, you can't do that anymore. you can't pull lines like that anymore.
Well, it's been great chatting with you about your times, Rory. And well, glad you made it to the end of your racing career in one piece, just about. That's the main thing.
Bolted and taped together, but we got there.
Yeah, well, I think when you look at your full list of injuries, it's probably pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, I'm still getting injured now. Ripped me pinky out the socket the other day. And my missus reckons I get hurt more now than I do when I rode. But I was like, well, it doesn't stop. But definitely a lot safer watching the footy now, and I was really enjoying the BSN stuff as well. So, still enjoy it. It's the best sport in the world in my eyes.
Absolutely, and hopefully we'll get you on BSN again at some point when you can fit us in, man. Thank you for watching this episode of Humans of Speedway. Hope you enjoyed it. There's many more episodes where that came from. Check out the back catalogue. And don't forget to like and subscribe on whichever app you're watching on YouTube, Spotify, or somewhere else. Follow us and don't miss out the next episodes coming soon of Humans of Speedway.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With the Capital One Venture X card, you earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy. Plus, you get premium benefits at a collection of luxury hotels when you book on Capital One Travel. And with Venture X, you get access to over 1,000 airport lounges worldwide. Open up a world of travel possibilities with the Capital One Venture X card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.